It's James Lutton for Pro Boxing Fans. Delighted to be joined on Zoom today with Stitch Duran. Stitch, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to be home, but got to check back into the bubble tonight. But it was nice to spend Friday and Saturday and a little bit of Sunday with my wife. But it could be worse, bro.
How's that been so far with the bubble? What's it like to be back as well?
Yeah, it's pretty much like we're on lockdown, kind of like the movie Shawshank Redemption. We're convicts in our room until they let us out to go do what we got to do, and then we go back into our rooms, But under the circumstances, it's not a bad thing to be involved with. It's history in the making. Who would have thought that boxing would come back under these type of terms? But props to Top Rank, ESPN, and even the MGM. They're doing a great job in keeping us safe and just keeping the system going.
Absolutely. Now, you are probably the most well-known cutsman in the business. When did you decide to become a cutsman? It's not your average occupation every kid wants to be growing up.
Yeah, that happened years ago when I was in the military in 1974. I was stationed in Thailand, and I studied the martial arts there, the Muay Thai system, and a little bit of Taekwondo, and opened up my own gym. And I was a trainer. I was a manager. I even promoted fights. I did everything, but I was even a cup man, and that just kind of floated to the top. And it's been like 26 years ago, I made the move from California to Las Vegas to do this. So it's not an everyday job. And, I get calls and emails and messages all the time where people want to be a cup man, and they ask me what it takes. And, I tell them very simply, you got to spend hours and days and weeks and months and years in the gym, working as a fighter, learning the fighter traits and the mental game, the physical aspect, and you just kind of learn as you go.
How do you learn? Do you have to get a license to be a cutsman? Do you need to pass certain bits and pieces to say, look, I've done this, here's proof I can do it?
No, that's a good question. And unfortunately, no. I was mentioning just the other day that combat sports, including MMA, now I'm doing the bare knuckle fights and boxing, but combat sports is the only A-level sport where we don't have to be certified through any certification to be considered a pro, and unfortunately, like me learning to be a cutman, I had to learn in the trenches. Years ago, before I moved to Las Vegas, I asked this guy that was doing a good job on cuts what he did, and he literally just blew me off. He said, F you. He goes, I'm taking this to my grave, and you got to learn like me. And that was the old mentality, and that's why now, John, that's I try to help people out, only because of those instances. But as I look at it, is a fighter will show or coach will show a fighter how to fight, but nobody shows a coach how to take care of the fighter. And that's something that I've committed myself to.
You sort of already answered the next question there, I think, but I was going to ask you, how can you prepare to be a cutsman? Is it all learning on the job, or is there certain methods that you can learn in the gym?
No, it's all on the job training, wrapping hands. You got to spend just, wrap fighters' hands. And, actually I would tell young cutmen is wrap your own hands, that way you get to know the pressure points. And, if there's injuries, let's say with the knuckles or the metacarpal, you can see how the metacarpal's kind of jacked up, the wrist, the thumb, how to address those, but unfortunately it's just on the job. Even working cuts, you got to kind of examine and not be like this guy that blew me off, 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, on the job training, unfortunately.
For yourself, what's the hardest cut to stop the bleeding from? Is it around the eyes? Is it, we see, I think you was in the corner for Badou Jack's scar across the forehead. That was a wild cut, that was.
Yeah, that was as a matter of fact, I'm working with Badou Jack now because of that situation. But that cut right there. And because we have that big vein, when you laugh, that vein pops up, right? Well, when you cut that vein, it's a little bit bigger than all the small ones that are around here and all that, and they'll bleed like a pig, And I remember the bloodiest fight I ever worked with, it was a UFC show, Jonathan Goulet fought Jay Haran, and Jay Haran took a knee right here, and the cut was maybe that big, but he severed that vein, and both fighters had blood from the top of their head to the bottom of their toes, and there was so much blood, it just made me nauseated, and that was really about the only time that it ever affected me. But that one right there is extremely hard, And if like Badu Jack's guy, the guy that worked there before, we have a little joking around session that better him than me, and but that one is the worst.
What sport is the worst in your opinion for the cuts? Is it the MMA? Is it the boxing? Is it bare knuckle boxing?
Yeah, before it used to be MMA, when it was MMA and boxing, of course, because MMA has multiple cuts. But now that the bare knuckle fights are legal here in the United States, first time since like 1889 or 1886, but the cut ratio is usually about 70%, 60 to 70%. But in doing that now, the MMA cuts, because of the elbows, because of the knees, the ground and pound, a lot of those cuts are deeper. So MMA, deeper cuts, multiple cuts, bare knuckle fights, a lot of cuts. I know worked one fight, the fighter had 10 cuts. Actually, I thought he had 10 cuts. And those are the ones that I saw that were shown through a picture. Jason Knight, when he fought Artem. Turns out when I saw him, the next show, he said he had 12 cuts. So so they have multiple cuts for sure.
When you're in the corner, for example, in boxing, when there's not a cut there, what's your role in the corner? Do you have any sort of role? Do you play a part with the coaching side of it?
Yes, of course. There's every round you should do something. And like when I worked with Tyson Fury, the first thing I told him is, I do a lot of preventive maintenance, so I'll keep ice on you. I'll keep the KO swell on you and just minimize any of the irritations or any of the swelling or anything like that. And so, yeah, there's always that preventive maintenance. And then, you're there as a confidence builder also, just to kind of let him know that he's okay. But yeah, of course, you don't wait till something happens and then try to, put your finger on the dike and try to close it.
What's Tyson Fury like? He's a big personality, a big character, and he said that he brought you into his team after seeing your work with Klitschko, and he fought Klitschko back in 2015, I believe it was.
Yeah, I'll tell you what a doll, man. And I just worked with a couple of the Maloney twins from Australia that box on the ESPN, and I told them I've worked so many world title fights that it's not even about the championship fights no more. It's about the characters that I work with. Though that's what's important to me. And Tyson Fury, man, he jumps up on the top. Just a nice down to earth guy, man. I met him 2 weeks before the fight, and of course I was excited to find out that Bob Arum was asking about me. Tyson Fury was asking about me, and credit to Jorge Capetillo, the cut man from the fight before. He told Tyson that get Stitch because he has a lot more experience than me. But as soon as I walk into the gym, he puts his hand out and says, "Welcome to the team." And we talk about the cuts, and then we talk about me wearing my own sponsors. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Stitch, you do whatever you want." And I said, "Man, I like that guy."
Absolutely. What's the?
He could fight, and he could fight. That's the best part about it. His style of fighting. Nobody's like Floyd Mayweather. Nobody's going to duplicate that because that's Floyd Mayweather. But nobody's going to duplicate Tyson Fury because that's Tyson Fury. Nobody fights like him.
How good is Fury? In your experience over the years, like I say, you've worked with Klitschko. Fury stated a few weeks ago he feels he's one of the best ever. Do you feel he's the best in his generation? Where does he rank for yourself all time?
Yeah, well, he's definitely a top 10, heavyweight. Definitely, it definitely belongs up in the top. And I told him, I said, when you fought Vladimir, I thought Vladimir just had a bad day because he lost to a guy that didn't look like he was a fighter, just real unorthodox. But when I saw him fight Deontay Wilder, that same style that he beat Vladimir with was in a great fight with Deontay Wilder, and I became an instant fan of his. And then when I saw him training those 2 weeks, because I caught him right when he was starting to peak. The style of fighting that he was doing in the gym, sparring, was exactly what he did in the fight. And up around the third, fourth round, I knew that he was going to be in total control. And, and I told people, Deontay Wilder only has one way of winning, that's by knockout. And Tyson Fury has two ways of winning, either by knockout or going the distance. And if he went the distance, automatically he would win. So he's that kind of fighter. So, yeah, he definitely belongs up there. I think, and now that he's regenerated himself, because he said, when he fought Vladimir, he was out for like 3 years, just having a good time. And but now he's focused and, interesting to see how he's going to perform in the next fight.
Of course, you was in the Klitschko camp for that fight. There's a lot of almost mind games, I suppose. There was the the thickness of the ring canvas. There was the hand wrapping between Fury. Fury's team threatened to walk out and say, no, there's no fight over in Dusseldorf. Did that play a part in Vladimir's mindset on the night, do you think?
It's a good question. I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think it's more of not being able to read Tyson Fury and have an answer for his offense, have an answer for his defense. I don't think Vladimir really just kind of picked up, how do you beat a guy that's coming at you with 8 different techniques, at the same time? So I think it was more of that. And yeah, whether the canvas had anything to do with it, the hand wraps, I don't know. I think these guys, the Klitschko's are so disciplined that they just kind of let that go out the window. And I think that's what bothered Vladimir so much, is that he couldn't reprogram himself and get a plan B to beat a Tyson Fury.
In boxing, what's been the worst cut you've had to deal with?
In boxing?
Yeah.
Well, my coming out fight was, like I said, I've been in Las Vegas for 26 years. I worked with the fighter Raul Marquez that was defending his IBF middleweight title against Keith Mullins. Well, Raul ended up with 5 cuts, something like 70 stitches altogether. He had 2 big ones here, 2 Tyson Fury cuts here, 2 here and then 1 on his nose. And but like I say, like 70 stitches altogether. I kept him in the game. He defended his title, and that was my welcome to Las Vegas type of fight. And people didn't know who I was at that point. But see, I had a lot of experience in kickboxing. So when I moved to Vegas, I moved there with the challenge that I had done in the past, working cuts, and I figured a cut is a cut, and it paid off.
Do you feel any pressure between rounds? You've only got a minute to stem the bleeding whilst the coach is still trying to give their instruction. Do you feel any pressure? Have you ever panicked in the corner?
No, those days are done. To me, everything is systematic. You just, there's a protocol that you follow for everything. And of course, you got to make your adjustments sometimes, when you're working with a new corner, like these ESPN fights. A lot of these young fighters and the coaches, I don't know, because, normally I work 10s and 12s, and a lot of these guys are 4, 6, and 8 rounders. But just to make my adjustments with them. But, that's why it's important, like these ESPN fights, is let's say I pick you and your team. Well, I'll go in the dressing room and I'll talk to you and I'll talk to your team about, let's do this. This is your job. This is your job. This is my job. And let's work together as a team. So I try to lay a format out for them so that we could work as smooth as possible, because it's important for the fighter.
Do you get to choose who you work with? I mean, how does it work? Are you there and you're given an allocated certain amount of fights to work, or how does it work?
Yeah, Brad Jacobs, the CEO of ESPN, gave me a call, me and Mike Basil. And what he had said is, the fighters you work with in the past, you continue to work with those. Shakir Stevenson, Joe Smith, these fighters I worked with before. So Gabe Flores, I work. And but the other ones, what they do is once the fighter gets on the scale, when they get off, then it's like the Academy Awards. They have envelopes, and the coach picks one of the 2 envelopes, me or Mike Basil, and whoever they pick is the guy that will work with them. And so that's how it's done. It's pretty nice. It gives us a good opportunity to work with new talent, and then it makes us neutral. That's the thing about it, is we are neutral. We're there to give you 150%, and it's up to you to win the fight.
Is it always like that, or is it just at the moment in the bubble, just to minimize the people in there?
Yeah, it's just to minimize the people, and that's the only reason they brought us in, because normally a team would bring an entourage. If you're a high-end fighter, you bring the entourage, right? But here they're only allowing a fighter and 2 coaches, and a lot of times the cutman isn't one of the 2, and that's where we come in. So if they need to have their hands wrapped, we'll do that. Of course, we'll work the corners. So we try to make it as comfortable as possible. And there was 3 situations that happened Thursday where, for one reason or the other, 3 of the camps only had 1 coach. So Brad Jacobs from Top Rank asked, can 2 guys work a corner? I said, yeah, of course. So what happened with the first show that we did with Shakir Stevenson and Big Baby is they wanted me to wrap their hands, but they came in after the fights had already started, and our priority is to be at ringside. So somebody else had to wrap their hands. So Brad Jacobs asked, well, how do we remedy that? I said, very simple. You bring in the third guy. So the third guy is Bob Ware. He's the cut man for Floyd Mayweather. So Thursday we implemented how we make our adjustments through experience is 3 guys only had 1 guy work in the corner. And of course, those are the guys I'm working with, which would have been 2 of us. So I said, well, you know what, Bob is here. Let's use Bob as the third man. So I talked to the coaches. I said, look, your only job is just give instructions. My job is just to take care of his face. Bob's job is to pull in the stool, give him water, you know, get the mouthpiece of the spit bucket. And then that's the combination that we'll use as we go. So that seems to work.
Now, with a cutsman, you've got many tools. What's the most vital tool for a cutsman and why?
Well, all of them, but, you know, definitely an ice pack. Very simple. You know, sometimes an ice pack is the easiest thing but most effective thing because you do a lot of preventive maintenance with that. And when I say ice pack, I don't like those rubber ones that, you know, you see because the cold doesn't penetrate through that rubber as easy as just a regular, like a sandwich pack, very thin and all that. That's what I use. But they all have their benefits. The KO swell, the iron, you know, we use that for the swelling, cold direct pressure. The medications, the adrenaline chloride, also known as epinephrine, that closes up the blood vessels, you know. And of course, you know, the Vaseline in theory is so that the punches will slide and they don't get cut. But I've used Vaseline just about everybody that has got cut. So I don't know if that theory is a good, but we'll continue using it.
With the iron, do you only use that when you see swelling begin, or would you use that all the time?
Yeah, I'll use that all the time. I'll alternate, you know, depending on the type of combat that the guy's in for that round. Either it's the ice pack or it's the KO swell. And like Jason Maloney that fought the other day, right underneath, he had a little bruising. So that's where I apply the KO swell.
Now, away from the cutsman role as such, more of a recent topic came out about Darrell Miller. He tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs again. What's your thoughts on that, first of all?
Fucking dummy. You know, I'm not a big fan of that, you know, on unfair, you know, because our job as a cutman is to give that fighter every opportunity to win a fight. And whenever they stop a fight, it's because a fighter is at a disadvantage. Well, when you go and you shoot yourself up, you automatically put that fighter at a disadvantage, which is against all the rules of what we are supposed to be doing. So, yeah, I think, you know, down the road, years from now, he'll probably kick himself in the butt and say, you know what, how stupid of me. And as big as he is, why would you do it? You know, I know a lot of guys have done it for injuries, you know, but a lot of guys haven't. So, yeah, I thought that was a major, major mistake. And people are always going to look at him as that person. So it didn't do him no good at all.
What can be done to make an example of him and to stop it in the future?
Just ban him, you know, very simple, you know, and just get rid of him. And, you know, it's not fair to the other fighters that come in and work hard and, you know, and then they take a beating from this guy because he has the edge. It's just not fair. So I don't think, you know, for this sport to progress, we have to eliminate those kind of issues and just get rid of them. You know, if it's you know, if you got a little bug that's biting the apple, well, you get rid of that apple because it's only going to get worse and worse. Same thing with this.
With the sport, because of Miller especially, it seems the assumption now is that drugs are rife in the sport. You know, we feel that there are a lot of people who are probably cheating, just not getting caught. Have you ever experienced it in the sport yourself, that you've seen people doing it or heard of people doing it that haven't been exposed?
Yeah, you know, I normally don't get that deep into it. That's kind of out of my league. You know, I just show up for the fight. So it's not like I'm in the gyms or, you know, I'm working with a fighter and I know that, you know, he's shooting up and all that. That's kind of an element that's just not something that I'm involved with on a regular basis. But, you know, if you get busted, you get busted, plain and simple.
No, absolutely. Perfect. Stitch Duran, that is everything I wanted to ask you. Thank you for your time this morning over there. I appreciate your time and speaking to pro boxing fans.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.